Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 24th Caribou City Council meeting. Roll call, we're all present. Mr. Smith is absent. Invocation. We pray for our country at all times, that all citizens are safe, healthy, and happy. We pray for the wisdom for all those who guide and govern. Help this government body in every situation to know and to do things that are right and just, with soundness of judgment in making vital decisions. We pray for the peacemakers, that the holy, life-giving Spirit may dwell in their hearts, and that the barriers of fear, suspicion, and hatred may fall. This we pray to the Holy Father. Amen. Number 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, the public forum. Comments could be submitted to the city clerk prior to 5:30 p.m. as of today, or we're allowing people to come in and make their presentations public. Any letters or anything from anybody? Nobody? Anybody from the public wish to speak? Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Take this off so at least I can speak and breathe. My name is Bruce Eggleston. I'm a resident of Caribou for over 20 years. Live at 34 Coolidge. I have 3 things I'd like to bring up. Number 1 is for the snow removal bid on that. I attended the pre-bid meeting with the contractors, which explained the whole scope of the bid and what was going to be involved and what they had to do and so forth. I received the follow-up information from Dennis as far as breaking down the costs and what the bids were. I hate to say it, but it's kind of a no-brainer. There's a $600,000 difference between the bid for everything, which was by Silver Star and Public Works. One of the things I want to say is, if you go out for a private bid on this type of service for a community, that contractor, he's got to make a buck. Otherwise, he can't do it. With the city and Public Works, they are not in the business of making money. They are in the business of providing a service. And we need to keep that in mind. And personally, I think a lot of energy and time has been spent on this. And I think we got to nip it in the bud right now. Let's move on. We've got more important things to discuss, and let's leave it with Public Works. And we went through the exercise. We know where it stands. A little bit of a learning curve here, but let's be done. Let's move on. I mean, $600,000. We don't have that extra money in order to award that type of bid. With that being said, my next issue for more important things is talk about the firehouse. Meeting I heard, there's over $300,000, potentially over $300,000 repairs that need to be done. There is some structural damage to that building. My question to you folks is, are we going to play Russian roulette with it for another winter? And hopefully things keep standing and we don't have any major collapse or, failure in the building? Or are we going to do something about it? If we're going to do something about it, we're running out of time. If we think we're going to be able to do something before the snow starts flying here. And right now, it's very tough to get any contractors, as Doug will, I'm sure, support me on that, for any type of project. And the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. Let's face it, it is what it is. It needs to be addressed, and I think that needs to move up on the priority list. Is what are we going to do? Are we going to play Russian roulette here for another winter and kind of throw it around and see what we're going to do, or are we going to make some advancements and say, hey, let's get somebody to come in here and do a true look at it and give us some true estimates of timing, costs, and the whole 9 yards. The other thing is, on the agenda, I saw you had on there about talking about the financial policy for investing city monies. I attended that meeting, as some of you know, and I brought up a few points. I've talked with Dennis with it, about it, of where it stands, and finding out information of what other options we have besides just CDs. I know we're kind of at the end of the investment window now, when things come and due, the end of August, first part of September. We're running out of time. My suspicion is that the city is probably going to take that $3 million and just roll it over into CDs. But what I do hope is that maybe I made some awareness, so when the next time comes around for renewal of these, that we be better prepared and take a look at what our options are, and let's get somebody in here that maybe can walk us through and give us the best return, guaranteed, for the city. So I know the thing on the agenda is to talk about the policy, but I wanted to bring up, because I know the timeline is kind of, it's running out, if my memory serves me right, as far as for rolling over those, doing something with that $3 million. So those are my 3 points I wanted to bring up, and hopefully some decisions can be made. Okay?
Thank you,
very
Bruce.
much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Anybody else? Yes?
My denial glasses from Walmart. I don't think I need them, but I'll get you because I'm wearing the Yankees. My name is Bill Gehring. Live at 30 Fenderson Street. Been in Caribou since 1993. Teach school at the Caribou Alternative High School. I've been doing that forever. Since 93. My tour of duty was 10 years in Allagash when there was a school. What I want to discuss tonight is kind of give us a little history of my property is 30 Fenderson Street, and then I made kind of an offer from the last meeting on 32 Fenderson Street. So I just want to kind of give you a rundown of the history of how things have been for us. Like I said, I've been here since 1993. Fenderson Street since 1997, so 23 years or so. I will share my interest in 32 Fenderson Street as it is abutting to our property on two different sides. We've always talked about acquiring the abutting property at 32 Fenderson Street when the time was right. We have lived, if you guys, I know the house is gone now, but we have lived in the shadow of the eyesore house pretty much by what looked like a hayfield from time to time due to hardly mowed lawn, junk vehicles and equipment, and at one time they had actually a little oil spill there in the house where water got in when the people weren't living there, lifted the tank, dumped it, and myself and my neighbor, I don't remember Jay got us some years ago. But we kept on talking about how we had headaches in it all the time. And then we realized the area next to our house was kind of a different color where there wasn't a green grassy color. So what happened was it was the oil that was coming in. But also in the house, you know, that many families have gone back and forth. When they added a new roof to that house, one of the roofers were telling us that there was still a family of raccoons living upstairs, but they still put the roof on anyway. But over the years, what we have done, we have helped to maintain the property from time to time. We've cut the grass, snow blowed, weed whacked, kept an eye on the house and the property. For our property at 30 Fenderson Street, we've always tried to maintain the upkeep of our property and take great pride in it. We have won in the years past, it's been a while, but when we had the garden club, won many awards for the garden club landscape beautification committee, including Yard of the Year 1 year. During Caribou Cares About Kids, the garden club asked if they could use our property as a location for garden tours. So of course we said yes. So even though we have a small lot, we kind of try to make a big statement of what we can do with it. We've also donated plants for the perennial sale fundraiser for the Caribou Library and continue to do so. We have continually built flower gardens on the property, added plants to our property, and so on. Our vision for 32 Fenderson Street is to create a flower garden area of annuals, perennials, pretty much the area where the house was. We would like to plant some fruit-bearing trees, some ornamental trees and shrubs as well. And I say for 23 years, but since we've been there pretty much, it's kind of been my wife's dream, and I'd kind of like to make that happen if possible. Every year we kind of thin out our plants. We donate, we give them to people, and we plant some in other areas. Unfortunately, this year, probably due to COVID more than anything, we had a lot of extra plants, but there weren't a lot of people to make the contact with, so we had to end up, discarding them. We feel this area would be a great place to move those extra plants and allow flowers to grow on the hill and be able to share it as well. A lot of times people do drive by our property and out there watching each car go on. And they do slow down. Usually the older ladies, the hands are pointing out, I'm like, I just cut the grass. So it would really be nice to change this blighted property over the 2 decades that we've been there, to take shape and be transformed into something beautiful and eye-catching, not just for us, but for the neighborhood and for the community as well. That's kind of our dream or our goal at this point. Take you back to a little history. Most of you or some of you might know this. We researched when the property had to come up to bid. I don't have the years down here, but I know the last 2 minimum bids, one was at 14.7 and the other at 9.5. Still with the house needed to be torn down. First bid we weren't aware of at 14.7. The second one, I think I came up and I talked to Carl for the first time and I asked about the property. And he goes, oh yeah, that just closed yesterday, so for the bid. And I don't think any of the bids were taken at that time. But sometime shortly after, somebody, a non-Caribou resident, did acquire that property for $500 with the house on it. And this non-Caribou resident paid $500 with the stipulation, to my understanding, that the house would be torn down within a specific time frame. So that did not happen, but the non-Caribou resident was able to, take the door, took doors, copper pipes, furniture, etc., as well as the Amish shed that was on that property and its contents. And when all said and done, he made a profit of, from what we could figure out and looking around Facebook and all that, so over $10,000. But did not fulfill his agreement to take the house down. So the property ended up going back to the city of Caribou, and that's kind of where we're at. So for the last 2 years or so, we've been looking at ways to acquire the property, and in that time we noticed much traffic in and out of the house, not just the animals that we see roaming or hearing. So what we did is we set up a game camera see what was going on, because that's where we lived, and, you know, we sent quite a few pictures to the town office regarding the traffic of the people, and they shared some with the police department, because there were some young kids in there and stuff like that. But one of the intruders we caught on camera actually had a warrant out for his arrest, and the Caribou police acted on that and were able to apprehend him, and I'm not sure where it went from there, other than, you know, they did get him out of it. So in terms of trying to acquire the house, acquire the property, definitely the house would have to be removed. It was condemned. And you remember the house, most of you don't assume you do, but if not. So what we did, we tried to see if we could bury the house, but too many new rules on that, you know, we couldn't do. So I talked to Scott Susi, I believe it was, at the fire department, see if there could be a control burn, and it was just too close to everything, and also rules, and, you know, what if the wind picks up. So that was out. Somebody told me to talk to some other people who, I guess they used to tear down houses and they would bring it to their big pit and burn it. So I tried a few names that I called, and of course they said, oh, we can't do that anymore. And so we were kind of running out of options for that. We got multiple estimates by local contractors to tear down and dispose of the house, ranging from $14,000 to $20,000. So then we looked into the possibility also the town being able to tear it down using the city workers and equipment. But that didn't happen as well. So finally, we found a cost-effective solution. I know you guys probably know Tom Houston from the high school. Mr. Houston. He is in charge of the heavy equipment. He's the heavy equipment teacher at the high school. So he came over to the house one day, and we went over, took a walk around the property. And he told us that he'd be excited to take on the project of removing the house. We too, of course, were excited at this possibility of being able to acquire this property after spending so much time researching options. And finally, after 23 years, we kind of saw a light at the end of the tunnel. As we were preparing to make this happen, an unforeseen problem came about. It's called COVID-19. So that meant the heavy equipment class could not perform the task or go in there, and we weren't sure when school would be back, how it would be back. So it was looking up until March, until we were going to act on it, and of course the school's closed. But then last month, the house was finally torn down, and immediately we submitted a proposal, an offer, to be presented to the council. I know that went to an executive session last meeting. We were hoping that an offer would be accepted, or at least set up a dialogue between us and maybe a possible counter offer. But currently, I know it's going out to bid. We did not realize at the time, my wife and I, that we could even attend the meeting still. We weren't. We just figured COVID-19 and people would, at home on the computers. We could have attended rather than here. So, I don't know, perhaps it could be a proposal at some point that the city would have the option to approach those landowners that have abutting properties first, to have the chance to acquire property before putting them out to bid. That's just an idea I'm throwing out. I'd say have the option. And I don't know if there's still a chance that we can still come to some kind of purchasing agreement on the property at 32 Henderson Street. I know it's already gone out to bid. Maybe there will bid. Other than that, I don't know how that's going to work. So what we'd love to do is keep the vision and my wife's dream alive. I would really love to make this happen, if that's a possibility. Hopefully it will be. And we thank you for your time. I speak to kids all day long at school where I teach, but it's a little different coming. And that's where we're at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You'll have to bear with me a little bit tonight because I'm a little ill prepared. And I don't want to get mad. question I want to ask. Do we own an ambulance service here?
Well, Wilford, we own an ambulance department.
Do we fund it with taxation?
We do.
Totally?
Well, I suspect that the fees that we charge for that service to other communities helps it.
Who's talking? Any of you?
I am.
Oh, you are. I'm looking around and I'm hearing voices across the room.
I'm sorry, I thought you were directing questions at me.
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's just go through. Now, how is it funded? Don't we collectively fund it through taxation? Okay. I got a bill in hand here that's made out to Gloria Martin, who died almost a year ago now. Been getting these bills about every week for the last month and a half. All I needed was to get bills from the ambulance department. And I had insurance. And they said only one insurance paid. I'm working on the other insurance now because they should have paid their share. But the first insurance paid enough for what they did. And I'm a little disturbed, and this is to include, I think some of the fault should be bared by the nursing home. I don't know what happened up there, but I got two bills, which I didn't know happened. I know one happened, not two. Okay, I'm going to read this off the way I wrote it here, okay? I was not aware of two calls for ambulance services for care of a nursing home for my wife, Gloria. Gloria had an accident and checked over right after the accident. We were out for a walk and she slipped out of my hand and fell and hurt herself. Before I left, I made sure she was all right. They've got certified nurses up there. There was nothing wrong, you know. And before I went to bed that night, I called again. Everything was fine. In the interim of time, an ambulance was called, which I wasn't notified. I went and visited her the next day. Everything was fine. I think it was the third day when I got a call about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning that they wanted me at the nursing home right away. There's something wrong. The ambulance service was there. They were working on my wife, Gloria. So I hurried up and run up there, and when I got there, now bear in mind they have certified nurses there. They don't need EMTs pawing all over my wife. She should have been prepared to go right to the ER right then and there, not groped all over by two guys in the ambulance service when they should have a female for a female, at least one female. They do have for prisoners, don't they? They put a female prisoner in a cell, they have to have a female officer there. Am I correct? Seems though for ambulance service you'd have to have the same thing. That wasn't so in this case. They said they didn't want anybody else in the room. Why not? I mean, here are nurses that are certified. And they shouldn't have had to work on my wife. They should have been able to just pick her up and take her to the hospital because they were in tune with the ER then. That didn't happen. They screwed around until it was too late. She passed away. Now, I'm not saying that she wouldn't have passed away. They could have saved her life. That would have been a hope and a dream of mine. That didn't happen. Now I'm a little, and I should have had Mr. Sear come in with me tonight because he bears some responsibility here too. They've got a van up there that they should have taken her right to the hospital right away. They had certified nurses. The hospital was within seeing distance. The bill I got was the two bills I got were for both the full amount of the calls. Now we're within seeing distance of the hospital. Okay? I'm wondering how much it costs to go pick somebody up in Perham versus somebody at the nursing home and take them to the hospital. Does anybody know that? I know these bills were atrocious. And they want me to pay $150 each time they went. Well, needless to say, I'm not a happy camper because they're not billed to me, they're billed to Gloria and she's dead. How are they going to collect? We can't resolve this. I want the manager to be on call. If we can't resolve this with your fire and ambulance department, my only alternative is let a judge make a decision. So I don't want any more letters every week. It's not surprising the post office is going broke because these guys got a big discount on sending letters. My mailbox is full every day. I got a letter for a donation the other day and the guy says, boy, we hope you make the donation. We sent you a stamped envelope. You know how many stamps was on there? 3 1-cent stamps. Great. But I want this resolved, but I think we're going to have to let a judge do it. I don't think I owe $150 for 2 trips. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. And my insurance should have paid. I've got 2 insurances. I had them both for both of us. They were both in our name, in different names. So I think what they collected already is enough. Now, I pay taxes in this town. I've lived here all my life. I live in a 32 by 32 footprint house, and I pay plenty for taxes. And I pay them every year. Part of it goes for the ambulance service, which has been a thorn in my side ever since we took that over, and it's an overtime bill for the fire department. It does nothing. I would ask that you go over with this problem that we have with employees in this town, because I think they're having a field day tonight in social services with you guys, and they're all people that work for the community that's on there bashing you. And I'm not a happy camper with that either, because I think you people are doing a good job, and you shouldn't be treated that way. The language they use is very disturbing, very, very disturbing. And it shouldn't be happening. No. This is coming from some of the employees. I want want you to direct the manager to those departments and find out who them employees are. Maybe we can help them. But find out who them employees are, and they should disappear. You can hire somebody else. Them are pretty good jobs. I've been told that it's hard to fill the positions. That may be so, but I don't think so. With all the people out of work, it should be easy to fill the position. But I want this bill squared away tonight, and I want you to think about rethinking about privatizing the ambulance service. I've got the old contract with Crown Ambulance. We made the worst mistake of our lives when we didn't force that issue and go private with them. It's been a thorn in our side ever since we took that on. It wouldn't have cost us near as much. We could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money over these years. This is terrible. So, if you need help doing this, why don't you set up a committee to do a study on the labor force in the city of Caribou and the different departments and what they do. I hear from one gentleman that said you got contracts that were $600,000 more than they can do it at the highway department. Is that right? Well, I can tell you why that they were $600,000 more. Take a look at the contract for the ambulance service with Crown. It's an ideal situation to do the same thing with the highway department contracts. You didn't do that this way. The people out there are not equipped right away to do those contracts unless they're allowed to use the city equipment, rent the city equipment, and maintain the city equipment. And that's what Crown Ambulance Service was going to do. And we would have come out ahead, way ahead. Well, I think it's time to bite the bullet and do a study on the total labor complex in town and what they do. The manager was good enough to send me the synopsis on the fire department, how much time they spend fighting fires. They put more mileage on the fire trucks to hang Christmas lights than you do fighting fires. So they got a little time on their hands. But with the ambulance service tied in there, that gives them a lot of overtime, because all the time that they're spending waiting for a fire, they're getting paid anyway. And they add those hours up. By the time they get an ambulance call, most of them are overtime. Don't you see anything wrong with that? Do you? Now, would it be possible to set up a committee?
It is.
And this contracting the highway, the functions of the highway department for certain things in town, the way you did it was all wrong anyway. It would have never come out any different. Never. God's will. You had to do it different. There was no way that anybody was equipped to do just that unless he just wanted the parking lots back. Getting back to parking lots. The parking lot in the shopping mall downtown. Make it a mandate of yours to hand that back to those people and let them take care of it. That's the law, or the rule of the land in Caribou, Maine. Read your charter. Anybody that owns a business has to have a certain amount of parking lots. And that goes for the people on Sweden Street too. On the street itself. They're supposed to take care of their own sidewalk. So we're spending a lot of money here for nothing. And the taxpayers getting tagged with it. Case in point, the highway department comes and tars the road in front of my house because it's dilapidated. Did they send me a bill for what they did in the front of my house? Do they? Or do my taxes take care of it? Now that isn't hard to answer. Do they or don't they? Well, they don't, right? Am I correct? They don't. It's already paid for in my taxes. Why isn't the ambulance service the same? The ambulance service is a disaster. Outside of the realm of the private sector, it's a disaster. When a town tries to take it over, there's no way that they're gonna come out ahead on it. As long as you sign union contracts, you're buried in debt. You don't have to sign union contracts either. That's another thing. But this bill here has to be taken care of. And we gotta come to some conclusion somewhere near tonight. What do you think would be fair? You wanna end up in the courts with this? I got nothing to lose. I mean, the only thing a judge can tell me is I gotta pay the bill. So, the ball's in your court. Will you take care of this? See what you can do? Just don't send me another one. I mean, I've been heating my house here all year with mail. Donations to politicians. And these bills, them are going into the fire too. I keep one just to remind me of it. But I've got 6 already, I think, this month. And then I got a call from the girl at the billing department. About the bill. Now, I told her to be at the meeting tonight. Is she here tonight? No? I told her to be here. Listen to what I had to say. But you've heard it, and I'd like to have it taken care of because we've got to make some drastic changes with that, especially where we're contracting with other towns. I want to know the difference between the payment for somebody in our town and the payment for somebody in the other town. And as I take it, we contracted dollar for dollar for these towns. Did we figure in mileage? Did we figure in time? Something ain't coming out right. That's why we're in trouble with the ambulance. Mr. Mayor, you got an answer for me?
Wilford, this is a chance for you as a citizen of Caribou to have your comment. And I've always given great liberty. Some will argue with me, too much liberty for people to have their say. We can answer some of these questions when we're done the public forum part. It's not at this particular point of the conversation, it's not a give and take right now.
I
It's,
don't expect you to come to a conclusion right now. I expect you to have the proper authority look into it and come to a conclusion. Okay? But actually, the bill isn't in my name. And she's in heaven, so maybe God will pay it. May not be me.
thank you, Wilford. Thank you very much. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else? I'll bring the public forum part of the program to a close. Anybody from the council have anything to say to any of the people that spoke?
Excuse me.
Hearing none, I'll say to Bruce, I don't believe that it's too late to continue looking at reinvesting at our current state. I believe, if my memory serves me correct, we were not going to invest the whole thing all at once for any great length of time until we had researched this thing properly and we've gone through the hoops. So I do not believe it's too late to continue to look into it, into your deal. I'll also like to say, I don't think we're playing Russian roulette with the safety of the fire department people. We're doing, honest to God, I really thought all we were doing was putting a rubber membrane on that building. And just the sheer shock of what came back has caused me to just go, what happened? So, and we're going to take care of it, and it will be done. But we have to figure something. We have to figure this out. That's $300,000. $210,000 of it I wasn't expecting. That's just my personal as one of seven. But we're going to get to it, and we're working at it. And I say this, and people turn their head at me so many times. Government is not made to work fast. It just isn't designed that way. Because if it was such a concern, there would have been a pot of money in a reserve account that we could have gone and fixed it right now. But there's no money. $75,000, something like that. I'm just picking numbers, you know, that's what I recall. So it all just happened within the last 6 weeks, and we're trying to put it together. Bill, the only way I know how we can get a fair price for what the city puts into anything is through this thing they call the bid process. And I don't know if we can shortchange that and be fair to the Caribou taxpayer. It's in the rules. We do not have to take the highest bidder. There's political consequences for not doing it, but we've been known to do it. We take your work and your time that you've spent trying to figure out about that piece of junk property, and I commend you in your effort, you and your wife, and really the neighborhood, for putting up with it. It's why we have a blight committee. I can only say, when we get what we think is a fair return, that gives us that much more money that now we can reinvest and go take care of another dilapidated building in another neighborhood. So I take your, and I know the council does, we take your efforts and your comments seriously. Wilford. The system has been, and this council didn't create it, there's a per capita cost to own and be part of the ambulance service. Look at the friction we ran into by just trying to have other communities pay the same price that Caribou citizens are paying for department cost. It's unbelievable. You mentioned it. But Wilford, those people don't even use their real name.
Pardon me?
Those people don't use, the people aren't even using their real name on there. I commend the people that do use their real name. I mean, I might not agree with them, but at least they have the gumption to use their real name. To try to find out who those people are that aren't using their real name, I'm just one of 7, but there's a lot of calories to be burnt there, and I've just learned to ignore them. As far as the billing, would you mind calling Dennis and setting up an appointment? Have you sat down and talked to Dennis about this yet? No, this needs to be, if you don't mind, just make an appointment with Dennis, please. Go over the bills and let's see what happens. But how do I say this without getting in trouble? We're not experts. I don't think any of us are experts in the medical field, and I don't know if we as a council, I don't think we should get involved. Should an ambulance been called? Shouldn't an ambulance been called? That's not in our realm to make that decision, that they should have gone or should not have gone. We have to leave that up to our department head, and in this case, the nursing home people. But as far as getting billed twice for one call, that's a legitimate concern. And I think a meeting with Dennis.
Excuse me, it's not one call. They're billing me for 2 calls.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
But they only went up once, you said.
They may have done the second call.
Oh, well.
But I should have been notified. You know, nobody told me a thing, and a year later, I started getting bills in the mail. But my wife gets bills in the mail.
Well,
And, as far as the ambulance service is concerned, hey, if I owe the bill, I'm not going to tell you that I can't afford to pay it, okay? I'm saying that it's very unfair when I have to pay and other people don't. And a good case was the nursing home itself. There was only 2 of us up there that were paying out of pocket. 2 of us. Can you imagine $10,300 a month?
Wilford, these are outside of our jurisdiction. Getting billed twice for one call is how I interpret what you said at the microphone. That's not right. I agree. And that's something that we ought to look into.
But that's just part of the story. This brings up the true ambulance service cost for people that are 15 miles out of town. I mean, there's something wrong with that whole system. It's not right. It should be in the private sector.
Well, Wilford, See,
we're picking it up with taxation, and we shouldn't be doing that. We're making up the losses with taxation, and we've got the only skin in the game. They don't.
we're working on it. And we've made great progress. I feel we've made great progress as compared to where we were 4 years ago.
Well, yes, I realize you're working on it as a council, but couldn't you set up a committee of people?
After you meet with Dennis and we get this billing thing figured out,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, I'll be calling you to be on the committee. I promise you. Because
I mean,
I-
I don't know everything, but I got a little business sense.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I know when we're getting the royal screwing.
Let's take one thing at a time.
Yeah,
If we have 5 things, we might not get nothing done.
yeah.
If we pick one thing, and that's that double billing that you said you got.
It's really, no, you're, there again, it may not be double billing.
Well,
See, I got 2 bills, 2 separate bills for different times. One of them I wasn't notified on, so I didn't know anything about it. This is one of my complaints, but it might have been legitimate. Nobody said anything to me.
okay.
But this brings up a case in point, how bad off the ambulance service is when it comes to billing. Because if I'm paying the same amount to take my wife within seeing distance of the hospital as somebody that's coming in from the middle of town or up in New Sweden, something's wrong, you know. And the time it takes that we pay each individual paramedic. That's where the screw up is, and nobody seems to be grasping that.
I personally, I can only say that I think the billing is being treated fairly to everybody. As it was, just as it has been for the last 20, we're doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years or so, to my knowledge. And it's, to me, until we get a committee set up and we dig into it and we research it, it's about as equitable as we can come up with. I've made this statement. This is such a complicated thing, this ambulance deal. I get it.
Not complicated to me. I can see the problem with it right away. I
Okay.
don't know why it's complicated to you.
Thank you, Wilford. Appreciate it. Item number 5, 5A, the July 15th special city and council meeting. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Hugh. Tommy, geez. Seconded by Joan. Any comments, any questions, any additions, any subtractions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. 5B, July 27th regular meeting. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Tommy, seconded by Joan. Any comments, questions, additions, divisions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 6, award of the snow plowing service contract. Well, Wilford touched on it, and Bruce touched on it. What's the wishes of the council? Hearing no wishes, we let it stand as we currently are doing it. Dennis, could I ask you for a favor, though? Because just like I thought, all we were going to do was put a rubber membrane on that fire station roof. I thought we were only going to look at parking lots. That's what I thought. But now that we have a quote for doing the plowing and the snow removal for Public Works for $23,000, I'd like to study that. I'd like to form a committee. I'd like to look into this. I remember it took us 3 or 4 meetings to get over the concept that we could run an ambulance for 58 cents a mile. I remember we worked on the concept, and it took many, many meetings before we stopped saying the ambulance service is making us money. I'm just gonna, and I'm not disparaging anybody, I just want to understand it. I don't think $23,000 is cheap for doing that. So to get the ball started, every pay period, and we pay them, I thought it was once every 2 weeks, but it's not. It's once every week. Could you give me, pick the last year of what the pay, just the total. I don't need to know anybody's wages, just the total for the public works for each week. How much of it was regular time and how much of it is overtime? And it just gives us something to just, and then hopefully we're going to track this through this course of this winter and see if I can, once again, I want to make it very clear. If I understand it, 95% of the people in Caribou will understand it. So I just want to understand this better. And it's a starting point. So could you ask whoever it is that you ask, payroll people or finance, for that figure? Once again, Dennis, I don't need to know anybody's pay. I just need to know the total. But I would like to have it broke down between regular pay and overtime pay. Doug?
Is that on the parking lots, you said, or on the whole snow removal? Because,
I'm talking the whole Public Works Department.
okay, I'd like to ask,
We can break it out. Once we get that, we can say snow season starts here, snow
Right.
season ends here.
for the whole bowl of wax, right?
Let's just start with that.
I'd like to ask Dennis for I'd like to see your work on your $23,000 estimate and your 225, I think it was, or 23,000, I can't remember right off. How you guys got there to those dollars, if you would, please.
Any other comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, thank you. Item number 7, new business, poll permit request. Dennis?
Councilors, under state law, whenever somebody, a utility company wants to expand their power in the city, they have to get a permit from the city. Generally, this is covered under franchise agreements, and in this case it is as well, but the documents that they've sent over indicate that the municipal officials need to grant a permit. Under state law, municipal officials means the city council. And there's nothing else in our ordinance that indicates that the city council has delegated the authority for approving these permits to the staff level. So it's being brought to you tonight. Basically what's happening is Versant, formerly known as Amera, is adding roughly 250 feet of line on York Street to accommodate a new business or expansion of a business going in there with Urban Farms, I believe it is. And so we need to say whether or not we're going to permit them to expand their power along York Street.
Is it going to cost us anything?
No.
You're just looking for, somebody's looking for a stamp of approval from us.
Correct.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Hugh, seconded by Doug, to give the approval for the extension of power service on York Street. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Number 8, old business, adoption and ordinance and resolutions. 8A, Resolution 7/1/2020, amending the 2020 expense budget. You have in your packet a list of amendments Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Doug, seconded by Hugh. Any comments or questions or? Joan?
If you read Dennis's memo here, the proposal failed, adopted by three to 2 vote. Councilors who prevailed in the last vote, Terrio and Cody, may call for a reconsideration of the vote to the resolution, or the resolution can be proposed and a new question presented for a new vote. Isn't that so? You can't just move it, right? One of us has to make a new motion, or if we don't, then you've got to change it up some.
According to Robert's rules, the resolution will need to be amended in some way before the question can be presented again for approval. If you try to just re-vote on what was previously presented, then Councilor Turner and Cody would have to ask for reconsideration.
Right.
Hugh?
I got 2 comments. I think I was scolded by Jane on more than one occasion the last 2.5 years that we don't exactly follow Robert's rules,
It's an amended.
first of all. And I'm going to go back 2 years to the Hilltop TIF agreement. Same thing happened, and we all came in here, and that got crammed through 5-2. Nothing was changed.
Precedence was set.
I don't remember that being any different.
Just
Oh.
reading what's on the instructions.
Well, I mean, for some reason, you didn't put those instructions 2 years ago when we voted on that TIF, and it was the exact same thing. Right? That was a 3-2 vote, didn't pass. I believe Mayor Martin at the time told them as they walked through the door, come back next week and we'll vote on this again. And you all voted for it again. No different. So, how is this any different?
I'm just saying what's on the thing, that we follow Robert's rules.
Okay,
I'm
so
just
we're
telling
saying
you
it's
what's
no
here.
different.
So, the question was asked, how could this be brought back up again? Additional study into Robert's rules, why isn't it in there? I bring it up, and I understand the past action.
Okay, so my question is why didn't you write those rules? Why was that not important when we voted on that TIF? It seems it's more important now, but it wasn't important 2 years ago. So what's the difference?
The Robert rules, again, if it was done exactly the same way, you're right, there is a precedent there. But at the same time, that doesn't mean a continuation of the same precedent. And it is a charter issue. Why did I put the same rules in there? Didn't research it where I needed to back then.
So does that mean we need to revisit the TIF?
Yeah, maybe that's a,
If you didn't do it correctly the first time, maybe we should. Folks, this is real simple. We have rules, we need to follow them, and we need to be apprised of them. This cannot keep happening because this isn't the first instance that it's happened.
What I see with this one, the council said, we're gonna cut $170,000 out of the budget, which, from the administration side of things, means at some point a resolution needs to be passed that indicates where that $170,000 is coming from. Even if this is adjusted by $1 in one or two of these categories, or there's another line item that's found to pull the money from, by the council action during the mill rate process, we need a resolution on $170,000.
I guess all I'm saying is there's 2 councilors that voted 2 weeks in a row to pass that TIF and didn't have a problem with it. But now there's a problem with it. Right?
Yep.
So I think if I can speak on that, and I don't know, but the way I understand it is that 2 years ago, it wasn't brought up to his attention as an issue, and somehow this time it was brought to his attention as an issue, so he researched it. And we all learn things. I can tell you I've learned a lot of things in the past 2 years that I didn't know 2 years ago, but I think the difference is his time and the fact that somebody pushed the issue, so he researched it.
Nicole, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable.
It might not be, but I think that is the answer, to say, I would have told you 2 years ago, I didn't know that was the process either. And I'm not making excuses, I'm just saying that I think that's where the difference is.
I mean, that TIF, you remember, it's almost $1 million over 30 years. But it was easy to not follow Robert's rules. I mean, this is $170,000 that we all know has to come out because we've got to pay for this mill rate.
So my concern with voting for it is not, I understand, because actually I talked to Dennis after, and I understand it's really important for him that we pass something because he has a job to do as well. But I didn't vote for the mill rate reduction because I thought it was really aggressive, and I'm very concerned to vote for these cuts that are really just kicking the can down the road and eventually will become a bigger issue, as has been pointed out by public people that have come as well. So I just have, I look at it different to say, if we were in a predicament and an emergency came along and we had to make cuts because of an emergency, I work in that type of organization, but to make cuts to give something that we shouldn't have gave in the first place is really a concern for me to put myself out there to, against my better judgment, to vote for these reductions when I don't feel they should happen.
So we're saying that the motion would have to be amended? Is that what we're at? Then I'll amend my motion to $170,001 and $240 from operations by your suggestion.
Okay, first of all, we're only dealing with capital right now,
Just the ones.
just the 170.
Okay, we'll go with $170,001.
Okay,
Motion amended.
We gotta have a separate.
okay, we have a motion on the floor to take 170. I'd like to answer one thing before we take a vote on it. I have no problem going back
That's fine.
to a 1 cent deal. I can't tell you how much it bothered me that we were using one-time money in last year's budget and throwing it in an operation. I just couldn't believe it. Talk about kicking the can down the road. And I wasn't given a chance for our first read to even talk about it. I understand that you feel concerned about it. And all I can say is, you know how I felt last year when I voted against the budget and it got passed.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's
I'm not
why
gonna
there's
take it
seven.
personal.
There's
Yeah.
7 of us,
Right.
and there's 7 independent people.
Absolutely.
I think it's a shame, though, that all of a sudden this comes up when the TIF did pass.
I can't speak back to 2 years. We're talking about this specifically.
No, but I
and
think it's
where I'm
I
at.
think it's a shame, and that it's all right one time,
And I
and
can't.
now it's not okay,
Yeah.
and it just, to me, it's politics. But that's fair enough. We'll play the game.
But let's just call it that. I think it's intellectually dishonest to call it, well, we didn't know. Just call it politics.
I can honestly tell you that I didn't know, and I think you're really cornering people and putting them in a place that's not factual. I was unaware. I'm telling you where I stand on this specifically. I've learned a lot in 2 years, and I would not have researched the Robert rules. I didn't even know about it this time, to be honest with you. It's here in writing. That's why it was brought up. But don't be throwing things out there that you don't know.
And I'd like to say the same thing. I had forgotten about that. I knew about it, about this having to have it go back to the person who voted against it. I totally forgot. I got a phone call. It was brought to my attention. I didn't say anything. I mean, I didn't change anything here. I was going to mention it when this came up, but it was already here. It was, when I opened up my packet, there it was. So I said, okay, then he's addressing the issue. I totally forgot. I didn't think about the TIF 2 years ago or whatever. I voted for the TIF. I didn't think about it. I'd totally forgotten about it. But now that I know, I agree. I'm the same way with her. I thought that mill rate was too aggressive. I didn't agree. I didn't vote for it. And I can't in good conscience vote for the cuts here that are being made to do it, and that's all. So if you want to, I think you need to have a motion to change the thing.
And I
then
think we're
do
heading
it.
in that direction to take care of it, and
Yeah.
that's fine. But we pay good money for a city clerk. They never said nothing. And I was.
Don't look at us and say,
No.
hey,
No.
well, we just got chastised as far as I'm concerned. And that's, it's not our job to make sure that these procedures are correct. And when it was brought to my attention, then that's when I knew about it, but.
Yes, Doc?
I think maybe the solution here is when we get our missing counselor in here on the next meeting and vote for modified Robert's Rules of Order, and this goes away. That's why, I think back in the early years, my first time through, and that's what we did. I think I have my own thoughts about this. Nothing personal, girls. I don't mean it that way, but I just have my own thoughts. Fair enough. I'll amend my motion when we get there, and we'll move it.
Okay.
And my apologies if you took it that I'm chastising you. It's more of a 2 years ago, it was not appreciated by me as a short timer at that point to have the mayor say to those people as they walked out the door, just come back next week. And I'll paraphrase,
Okay.
shove this through.
I can absolutely respect that, and I can tell you that, I would hope that wouldn't happen again. I definitely didn't see it that way when it happened, and I apologize if you took it that way as well. But again, that's 2 years ago, and I can't go
And your
back and
issue
change
would be
something.
with the mayor.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to accept Doug's bit, the reduction of $170,000. All those in favor?
What's that?
All those opposed? 4-2. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Resolution 8B, Resolution 8-1-2020, amending the city facade improvement grant program. This is a second read on this, I think. It was on the last council meeting, correct, Tommy?
Correct.
Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Tommy,
Second?
seconded by Joan. Any comments or questions? Or anything you want to do? Amendments? Dennis?
Just a question for the council. With these guidelines, we did have multiple applicants turn in requests this year for funding. I know that these rules are now being placed in effect. If the council adopts this now, would the council authorize us to reconsider those same applications again this year with the funding that the council's already allocated under these guidelines?
Okay. Motion on the table is to accept this document as it's written. Would you consider that a second request after we vote on this? Okay. So we'll stick to this first.
I just wanted to raise it.
Yep,
so they didn't-
yep, we'll come back to it.
do something else.
We'll come back to it. Dennis, let's make this about me. I'm not going to be able to use this program, am I? I don't live in a TIF district.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's,
And I say that so that when people come in here and want to apply for this, and they are not in the district, TIF district, we have to say no to them too. Correct?
under the TIF district, there's a certain amount of money that we can put specifically to facade improvements in the TIF district. There are other parts of the TIF funding that if the city wants to use it beyond the TIF district, we can earmark additional funds to be applied outside of the TIF district, for loans or grants.
But that is not in here right now.
No, it's not.
As it stands what we're voting on tonight, you have to be in the TIF district. I'm not saying next council meeting we can't revisit it, but as we're voting on it tonight, you have to be in the TIF district to receive these funds.
Correct.
Did I read that right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make it clear. And that includes Farmer Mark, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I think we need
We
to.
have a motion?
Yeah, we do.
We already have the motion, but I think we need to come up with another resolution that helps out companies outside the TIF district. Now, as Mark and I sit here, or anybody else that sits on this council, we can't get any funding, and rightfully so. We shouldn't. We're the ones that make decisions on who gets stuff, and we shouldn't get funding for, we shouldn't get CDBG grants or anything like that. But I think I'd like to see the council explore something on companies outside the district. And the reason why I call for this motion, because this takes care of getting people that need signs and need facade improvements. They don't have to go back to their landlord and wait, right? So for me, this is an ends to a means. But I still think this council should at least look at something outside of the TIF district, because it's
Tom, I
ridiculous.
view this as the start of a process.
Absolutely.
This is not the start, middle, and end. We're not done with this.
Oh, absolutely.
We're not done with figuring out how to invest money. We're not done yet. We're still looking at this. But we got to start.
Yeah, we guess.
And that's the point. And before everyone goes off on a tangent, I feel the need to make sure people understand that this is just the start. And we're working on it. And before people get upset that they can't get it because of this or that, we're working on it. It's an underutilized program that this council has identified that we'd like to see it start to be used. And with it, we found some issues. We found, like anything else, we're going to work through it. I did not mean that I know I can't get any money from the city because I'm on the council. I only use that as an example. So, okay. Doug.
I was just gonna throw, maybe we should just table until we get a full package, get the package rounded that included the out-of-TIF district. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
1/6 of another, I guess.
Doug, I'm in favor of passing this and get this ball rolling.
It's not an issue, I'm just
Yeah,
saying with me either. I'm just
Yep,
mentioning,
yep.
would it have been to do it in one swoop? If not, I'm okay one way or the other, as long as those other businesses are included. By the next council meeting, we should be able to have something that we could include the rest of yeah, I'm good with that.
I really envision that we do something tonight, we'll do something again, and we'll probably end up doing something the third and fourth time before this final pack. But we're breaking it.
Yeah.
I've learned that you make things too complicated around here. There's 7 of us, and there's 7 opinions.
I get it.
You know?
I get it.
Let's stick with, just get,
Fine. No,
and I think it's written good.
As long as they're involved,
And
Get
we'll-
them up there, and
Yep, and we'll tackle
I'm
it.
good with that.
So Mayor, if I might,
Go for it.
again, the TIF district has a program that the state has approved that says this is what you can use the money for.
Correct.
And so a facade improvement program specific to the downtown TIF district is what the state has approved.
Correct.
And so this has been drafted to handle, as you say, that one element of the TIF program, the budget that we have with the TIF dollars. All we need the council to decide is what other pot of TIF funds that we've already accumulated or we're going to start seeing next year, do we want to budget for grant opportunity outside of the TIF district?
Correct. That's how I've understood this process the minute we started it. Correct.
But the pot of money, according to the TIF program, that the council would need to use is what we're currently calling the revolving loan fund. We can use some of those revolving loan funds for grant purposes.
Okay, but that's next
Another
meeting.
day.
That's another day. And that will be brought up as a separate item so that we can all weigh in on that one. And then there'll be another part to this program too. Point is, we want to give out some money to our business people. Oh, and by the way, these funds, as they are tonight, can be used by nonprofits. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. But the nonprofit has to be in a district. Okay. Same rules apply. Okay. We didn't make up these. This is what the state said we could do with this. We right?
The state says facade improvement program, the guidelines, the criteria that we want to use to operate in that program, that's up to you as a council.
Okay.
The recommendation tonight is that it would be available to any business owner, any occupant of a business space in the downtown district.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Have a great evening. Go Boston. Introduction of Ordinance 4, 2020 Series, amending the liquor license regulation. Dennis.
This ordinance, we've had discussion in the last city council meeting about having an ordinance brought to you for consideration that would make it so our usual and customary permits that come to you for extensions or renewals, that the council would authorize the staff to handle that administratively so that we can speed up the process for businesses getting those licenses and not having to wait for council agendas before action can take place. So this primarily affects the liquor license regulations, and as I said, basically establishes that if it's a new permit by state code, it has to have a public hearing, and that will continue to come to the city council. But if it's an extension or a renewal, that the council is delegating authority to approve those to the administration. If there's an issue that comes up with the renewal, then that would come back to the city council as well, so that you can review it if need be.
Motion to approve.
This is introduction, sorry.
Oh, we can't.
It's first read, man.
Oh, wait a minute. It's under old business.
Only because we talked about it.
Oh, introduction. All right.
Introduce it.
Got me excited.
Okay. Tommy?
I just wanted this introduced, and we talked about it last meeting. I think this is going to be a way to move things along up here at the council level to more, not that these liquor licenses aren't important. Now, if the police chief and the fire chief and you deem it that the council needs to look at these businesses. What parameters are you guys using for that?
The ordinance outlines that a business that receives these licenses, they can't have so many violations of a certain nature within a time frame. And so we'll be looking basically at the record to say, does it meet that criteria or not? You know, if it looks like we've had some violations of altercations or illegal selling or what have you, when it comes time for renewal or revocation, that would be brought to the city council for consideration.
Unless if you otherwise wouldn't just put it through.
Right.
If there's any reason you just wouldn't put it through, then it gets kicked upstairs. I think that's
fair.
Yep. Yep. It's good.
I mean, that's for the business owners, not because some people had a fight out back, you know, and they had trouble there. I mean, business owners can't control that. I mean,
that's one of the criteria that the state gives us to look at, though, is there something that's happened on the property that we need to be mindful of? But certainly we can look at that from the staff side and say, what were the circumstances, who was involved, what was the situation? And if we don't see that it's of concern, we can move it through for renewal.
And if there is a concern for denial, prior to that going out, it should be brought to the council's attention why the denial. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, and we make it clear in the ordinance that you would be apprised of the information that we have, and somebody could appeal the decision.
for me personally, I'm in favor because of to expedite, make things a little easier, freer flowing, without having to kick it up to our level. But I am also concerned that the council keeps a mindful eye, no offense, but if somebody's going to be denied a permit, I want to know why. I'd like to know prior to it leaving the building and going back out.
Okay? So,
If it's going to be denied, it's going to come back to the council for denial.
Okay, perfect.
okay. So this will go on the meeting, next council meeting.
Well, we have to, it's been introduced, sounded like by Councilor Ayer. Now we have to schedule a public hearing,
Oh,
then act on it. So this will probably be the second meeting in September before we can adopt this
oh, we got to have a public hearing on this one.
on all the ordinances.
Got it. I'll catch up. Give me a minute. Thank you. Okay, 9. Item number 9A, review of city investment policy. Bruce, we're in your category now. Dennis, go ahead.
So the city council back in February 2015 adopted this investment policy. I can't find anywhere that it was reviewed on an annual basis that the policy says it's supposed to be. So I'm bringing it to you tonight for you to start to look at. If you'd like to make some changes, you can do that. The gist of the policy is it does give the city the flexibility to entertain mutual funds and other bonds besides CDs. It really comes down to a question of being able to manage that and still be able to follow all the state guidelines that are imposed upon us if we go into those markets. Right now, the policy establishes that the city treasurer will invest the funds based on the ability to keep things liquid and safe. We have to have a guaranteed no loss for the funds. And so it really is just for the council discussion. If you want to look at some other options, we can do that. But wanted to make sure that you had it in front of you for review.
Bruce, do you have a copy of this investment policy? Okay. Bruce, you seem to have shown interest in this little subject. I hope you will continue to
I'll be more than happy to.
keep your opinion known to us. We appreciate it. So we're at the point where we're going to look it over, and we're going to go through this process first. Dennis, in my discussions with you, and I just want to kind of touch base of some of the conversations that have been going on. Correct me if I've misunderstood how some things were said, but there are people out there, or there are systems out there where we could give, in this case, let's take a round number, $3 million, and we can give it to a group of people or somebody, some organization, and they're going to guarantee that we're not going to lose it. Did you? They guarantee it. It's guaranteed. Did I get that one right from you, or did I misunderstand that?
The state law allows the city to invest funds with an outside party if we want to do that. So if we can find an investment advisor or broker out there that can follow all the state guidelines,
Got it.
can guarantee us no
Okay,
loss.
I understand what you're
Loss
saying.
from principal?
No loss from principal.
Principal, because the interest is a very moving
That's a
target.
different animal.
It's altogether different, so
Right,
principal, yes.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I meant
No,
principle.
I'm,
Yeah, no,
So
yep, you would.
this is where the state code, it goes into, if you want to invest in bonds, they have to be specific government-only bonds with no loss. If you do mutual funds, you can only put a certain percentage of your
That's what it
investment funds
was,
into
yeah.
mutual funds.
Yeah,
And invest in the entrepreneurial market, but you can only put so much of your funds into that, and it can only be a certain percentage of their total stock. And they also have to guarantee no loss on the principal. So state code outlines very specific avenues and guidelines that we have to follow if we branch out beyond the standard securities of a CD, savings account, checking account that we have been using.
okay.
the whole nutshell, right, is to find the most aggressive earnings we can find, keeping the principal safe and untouchable. Yeah.
Right.
So, did we reach out to anybody concerning that? Has the city reached out, or as far as investors, investment guy, gurus, or anybody?
This time, we've followed the policy of
Yeah.
the treasurer as they looked at, in his opinion, the safest way to invest those funds right now. And as was indicated earlier, we did not reinvest that $3 million back into CDs. This was brought up at the last council meeting. The rates that we got back were 1.5% for 5 years if the full $3 million was invested. At this time, we've simply pulled it into a separate checking account that was getting 1.3%. We still have the ability to move those funds into other investment opportunities if we want to do that.
Okay. In the process of going through, which is probably why they want you to do an annual review, you understand the process more. So I urge everyone to just take a browse of it. And we're talking $3 million. And we're talking about trying to get as much back to the Caribou taxpayer as we can. But at the same time, we don't want to lose it either. So, you know, it's that slope that we have to work through, and through a collective process, we'll figure it out. Bruce, you wanted to say something?
What I was going to say is, they give you, because I read through the state rules of what you can do and what type of investments and so forth, is there's a lot out there. And that's where somebody from the outside who's closer to the investment market, who knows the funds, as long as they have the rule book in front of them and what they can do, they're the ones that can put together the best, for lack of a better term, you end up building a portfolio, because you're not going to have everything in one thing. You're probably going to have a CD. You're probably going to have a little mutual fund. You're going to have some bonds. You know, there's going to be a
It's
mixed.
going to be a mixed portfolio.
Yeah, it's going to be a mixed portfolio, but I don't think there's anybody in this room that is that close to that market to really see what is available
Yeah.
that fits within the guidelines of what the state requires for investing municipal money on there. That's why I think if when the time comes, and I think it's a good decision that you put it in check, so it buys you some time in order to get the ducks in a row, so to speak, and educate everybody as to do's and don'ts and what we can do and what we can't do, and have somebody come and actually give them what the rules are and say, what can you do? What's out there? Is there anything better that falls within these guidelines? And to be quite honest with you, have them come and do a presentation, and it will actually educate everybody.
Bruce,
And then, as a city council, then you can decide what you want to do, which way you want to go. What you want to do.
Bruce, about 8 weeks ago or sometime, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to go out on a limb again. Didn't you say you knew somebody that was
Yes,
willing
I
to
did.
come in and talk? Is that offer still available?
I'd have to make a contact. You know, I don't know the availability, but yes.
I remember you saying that, and in the concept of how things work,
It's some-
we move slow around here,
I know.
but we're talking $3 million,
And that's my
and
concern.
to work, to go at this slowly and understand it, it's outside the norm. I'm looking forward to hearing the opinion of somebody that I got the impression that's willing to come in here and talk to us.
Yeah, and they'd be willing to put something together to kind of get everybody attuned to what's out there and say what the options are. You know, and
First thing-
it wouldn't cost us anything.
Right.
Wouldn't cost
That's
us
what I liked. The
No,
part.
no, but it's-
Yeah, I understand. But at the same token, let us look at it first. We're going to look at it. And then we got to get this person the rule book. So he or she must understand it.
But what's funny is, here I received this, Dennis sent it to me, and I saw that it was February 2015, and first thing I read is, it's supposed to be reviewed every year. And when we had that first meeting on the investment, on what to do and everything, we didn't even know that this even existed. That's the impression I got, that we didn't even know this existed. So we've already made leaps and bounds.
I agree.
Leaps and bounds. And with that, we've already learned that, wait a minute here, there is some other things that we can do.
I
Let's
agree.
find out, let's learn.
I agree.
Okay, good.
It's just, I just can't tell you how many times people think they need an answer today.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's just not the way
No.
it
No,
works.
I don't,
And I didn't mean that you think that. No.
but I'm glad this was brought up. I'm glad Dennis brought this up. It gives a chance to put it on somewhat in the front burner a little bit, to say, hey, we've got some funds that are available for investment. Let's learn and see what we can do to get our best return.
Correct.
And do baby steps. We can start with baby steps.
Beautiful. Any other comments or questions? You?
Can I just make the suggestion, if this is kind of an ongoing thing until we bring it to a final revision, that it goes on the manager's report under non-economic development, or
Yep.
what we call that section?
Yep. I mean, yes. Okay, any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Bruce.
Yep, no problem.
Reports and discussion by mayor and council members. Any council member have anything they'd like to say?
We got to go back to 9B.
Oh, I apologize. 9B, review of city policy on disposition of tax acquired property. Dennis.
is another policy that's floating out there. This pertains to how we handle the tax acquired properties. Even outlines the process that we're supposed to be following before we put tax liens in place. I know that was a question last year, and with regards to the power plant is how did we get to that point of owning that? And if we followed this process last year, the way the policy outlines it, it wouldn't have happened, in my opinion. The process that we go through, I know there's been some discussion of if we do tax acquire a piece of property, the process that we go through as far as putting out to bid, part of that is by city charter. We have to put things out to bid. But we've talked about, as was mentioned tonight, is there the possibility of building in some preference to adjacent property owners to that bidding process? Is there interest in putting together these consent agreements as a requirement for properties and building that into this policy as well? So that as we look at some of these properties moving forward, we have a little more teeth and a little more flexibility possibly in how we handle those. So that's in your packet tonight for review and just to begin looking at how we want to look at this. The process of reviewing the liens really starts the end of September, where that list is supposed to be put together, presented to code enforcement, myself, finance, fire, police. We review everything at the staff level so we know what the histories are on property, so that we can present the list to you as a council well in advance of needing to waive liens or to consider abatement of taxes rather than liens. So again, this is just trying to get you more familiar with it tonight. If we want to make some changes to it, we can. We want to make sure that you guys are aware of this before we get into our tax lien process here in the next month and a half.
I have to, one of the issues that, and one of the reasons that I think I've really dug into the blight issue for Caribou is not only have I heard people say that blight's a problem in their neighborhood, but it was also in my world, if we have a piece of property that's large enough to put a house lot, that it would be classified as a buildable lot. So you take a piece of property that's been condemned, you fix it up, and because there's water and sewer going by, helps the CUD. The road's we're plowing past that road anyways. We have a certain amount of cost investment into that, and it's more productive for the city to have a taxable house on that lot because of the ripple effect that can give us versus staying there in a dilapidated state collecting nothing. I have no problem giving preference, and the bid process is the way the bid process is. If there's a piece of land that isn't big enough for a house lot, then I have absolutely no problem giving first preference to neighboring. I'm just one of 7. I have no problem giving preference. But if it's a lot that's buildable, and you can put a house on it, boy, we really got to consider how we handle it in the fairest way for everybody. So that's just a take. And I got interested in blight for that very reason. There's too many houses that are unoccupied in this community that if we just work on it a little bit could be turned around into revenue generators, so to speak. In other words, I'm still continually working on the income side of this equation that we call the city budget. So,
Speaking of income generators, the other element we've been talking about is the land bank possibility. And if we're going to have a land bank, we need to incorporate that into this policy and how we interact with the land bank versus putting things out to bid.
okay, I'm going to bring something up on that a little later. Doug?
I was just gonna bring back the point of an assessed value, some sort of starting point, again, namely over Mark, and what the mayor's mentioned was the higher, the better side of the equation. I'm gonna mention the lower side of that equation, that we don't get trapped taking an old trailer, we'll say, for $200 of taxation and cost us $5,000 to get rid of it. I'd like to see something, and I thought it was in here when 2 or 3 previous managers ago showed me that we had it in our tax acquired, that we had a $14,000 back then, supposedly minimum value before the city moved on it. So I think something should be put in there. We got to be careful not to take what we can't. And then, yes, that's still a problem, and we'll still have to work on it, but at least it isn't, i.e.
You're talking about like a floor.
Well, yeah, we have a minimum that we're going to say we're going to tax acquire.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, after everybody looks at it, we can have maybe the tax assessor working, whatever, come up with a value to the land. We got to have some value so that we know if we do tax, the citizens are going to come out at least even or to the plus side. They're not in the hole spending $5,000. Yeah, you get my point.
Right. So the other flip to that coin is, if you're going to set a floor, then the council needs to also decide what you're going to do with anything under that. Are we going to then strictly abate those taxes, or let them sit on the books for the 5 years and then abate them? Or that's another discussion, is what do we do below the floor?
My thought process on what I'm explaining to you is that 9 times out of 10 the trailers are in a park, for the most part. If they're sitting on land, well, that changes the whole picture, right? The water on the beans changes. They've got sewer, or they've got water, or they're hooked up to the town. I'm talking, moreover, if it's in a park, we don't race out and to try to collect 200 and spend 5,000. Don't tax acquire. It's the park owner's issue to deal with that trailer. Would be my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Look it over. Reading material. Discussion by mayor and council members. Dennis, the Mecon building, 60 access highway. It's done, correct?
Yes,
Money's been exchanged.
yes,
All the legal gazuntas have been taken care of.
yes.
So now there's this pot of money. Where did it go?
We have 75,000 of that we were obligated to pay back to the state CDBG program. They in turn allowed us to apply that directly to clean up blight at the Bird's Eye site.
Correct.
So that's where 75,000 of it went.
And there's an account somewheres that has Bird's Eye Sight on it.
Yes,
And we put 75,000 there.
right.
Okay? The rest of it?
Part of it went to paying off uncollected rents, so that we don't reflect that on the books, and the rest of it is shown as real estate.
And and I'm not putting you on the spot, and give or take a few dollars, what is left over after we did all that? After we put the money into the, what we call the bird's eye account, and after we paid off that rent that went for 2 years unpaid, after we paid that one off, what basically would be left? Give or take. I'm not asking.
Around $20,000.
$20,000. Where did that money go?
That's in the revenue line under city real estate sales.
It's under an item called real estate somewheres.
Okay.
Fair enough. Can that $20,000 be used to help repair the fire engine roof? Is a building, see, what's the definition of real estate? What, I've learned one thing about these accounts. Just on the surface, they say certain things, but what do they really mean? Can we use that money to help fix the fire station roof? Would that be allowed? And I'm not asking, if you don't know, you don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing this at you out of the clear blue.
We did not put that revenue into a separate reserve account. It's been put into the general revenue, the general fund revenues of the city.
Okay. So we could take it out to fix the roof?
It's under the general revenue side. As far as trying to just say we're going to take that money from revenue and use it as an expense, it's just a matter of authorizing the expense, and we, at the end of the year, do our revenues and our expenses balance out.
Okay, fair enough. What I'm saying is, we got to try to find some money to fix that fire engine, station, ambulance, that building. And I'm just trying to say, well, there's $20,000 here that we weren't,
There is a pot of money left over from 60 Access Highway.
And there's those funds too, yeah?
Roughly $10,000 that we had set aside for roof repairs.
Yep.
Obviously, we didn't use there. That would be one of the pots that I would recommend you tap into.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments from any councilors? Thank you very much. City Manager's Report. Dennis.
So, on the economic development side, we are still trying to coordinate with Corvair on the ribbon cutting ceremony. They are nearly done. We've been trying to get Senator Collins' office and the governor's office involved because it is a win for the entire state, and we used federal CDBG dollars to get it taken care of. Trying to get everybody in the same room is like herding cats on a political scale. And so we're still waiting for a ribbon cutting date on Corvair, but I think we're getting closer. The bird's eye cleanup, we are expecting our test results to come back at the end of this week as far as the test pits that we did, and we'll have all of the test results back. So we should know better by the end of this week what really the extent of cleanup is that remains for the site. We know that some of the materials that was tested is not able to be taken to Aroostook Waste Solutions landfill. We've got to bag it and cart it down to another location that's licensed to handle that particular type of asbestos. I did get in touch with the main DEC with regards to the $75,000. They again committed that yes, we can use it. We do have to follow the federal red tape for using those CDBG dollars, which involves having to put some things out to bid. and keeping track of Davis-Bacon wages and several other things. But we're working with that. The Title 13 rewrite, I just completed this afternoon, going through the entire definition section, and that should progress more quickly now that we've got that out of the way. Facade improvement, we talked about that tonight. It sounds like the council, you're willing to entertain using some of those loan dollars for an outside the downtown TIF district. So I guess I'm just looking for direction when I bring something back to you at your next meeting as far as grants for outside the downtown TIF district. That's what you're looking at.
I'm thinking that's our intent to go to, well, this ordinance thing's going to take a while, but that's not saying we can't walk and chew gum at the same time, so we could go to the second step, and that would be how can we help our business people outside of the TIF district? And yes, we would be looking for you and the staff to give us the first draft.
I suspect it's going to be very similar language. It's just a matter of picking the pot that we're going to be pulling the money from.
And you said, and grants, we'll take applications, but they're awarded at one time. That type of thing. That, yeah, we're looking to see something in writing.
Okay. We can pull that together.
And I, like things. Are we going to set a limit to how much we're going to take from that pot of money?
Right.
Things like that. I'm sure there's other questions, but I haven't looked at it yet. So.
The power plant, just an update on what's happening there. Versant is almost done with their construction project, and once they're done, they'll be completely out of the steam plant. I'm talking with Jim Vale with Algonquin Power. They are now working to get completely out of the steam plant as well, which would mean that they still have equipment in the diesel plant, but it appears by the end of this year there will be nobody that needs to be inside the steam plant. And so we're watching that one. The same pot of money that we've been looking at for cleanup of the Bird's Eye site, we can apply for that same pot to help look at the power plant. As far as going in, maybe looking at a phase 1 environmental study and possibly some cleanup. That's one of the big issues that we have with the power plant is the concern about asbestos wrapped pipes everywhere. And so there may be some grant money that we can tap into between NMDC and the EPA to handle that. Is that something the council would like us to consider?
Opinions from the council.
One of the strings that's attached to the EPA money is that the owner has to own the property to apply for it. So, and being a government, we qualify for those funds. A private company would not qualify for it.
But is that going to be like Bird's Eye, where the city's going to be encumbered with it for 20 years?
The Northern Border Region Commission, that was their stipulation. The EPA funds, from what I've seen, don't have that same requirement. The intent of the EPA is, let's get these sites cleaned up and back in the economic process so that it benefits the region.
I don't think it's a bad idea then. I mean, I just think we should think hard about taking money that's going to keep it in the city's lap for 20 years.
I look at this and I say, what's our end game with this thing? What's our marketing plan?
That's the question that they're gonna ask us as well, is what is the city's intent for the riverfront?
So,
Do we plan to see these properties get redeveloped? Do we wanna see the bones used and put something in that building and create trail systems and multifamily or commercial opportunities along there? They're not looking for an engineered or architectural designed plan. They just want to know, are we intending to reuse these properties at the end of the funding?
are we?
It's in the general plan to create a riverfront development potential. And this is one of the major bookends of those properties. And the biggest thing to see them get redeveloped is the environmental side of it.
What about the dam? There was a comment.
Algonquin asked if we were interested in buying the dam from them. I told them probably not. They posed the question of would the state be willing to purchase the dam as a recreation resource in Aroostook County, and I haven't been in touch with the state to even reach that subject yet, but I don't know how many dams the state owns across the state for similar purposes. As I understand it, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that dam. But it's kind of.
I just was wondering if there was talk of them removing the dam.
The lady that I spoke with at Algonquin Power indicated that their permit for power generation, she believed it had some restoration clauses in the permit. So unless the state or somebody picks up the dam and will maintain it, they may have to reach that and restore it. Then you get into the environmental issues of, are you now causing more damage to the wildlife and the habitat by getting rid of the dam than you are in leaving it in place? But that's something that the state will have to look at.
But that would be between Algonquin and the state.
Right. Other administrative projects, the Blight Commission, the Blight Toolkit report. We gave that to the council for you to look at. I haven't received any comments back from you. We gave it to the planning board to look at. They provided us a couple of comments. If there's no other comments received, we can bring that back to the council for adoption as just basically accepting of the report and the willingness to try to get it implemented. The airport, we found out that the new traffic monitoring system, they call it BARD system at the airport, the state has changed the way they want to handle that. They're going to just pay for all of the software and hardware to get that installed at the airport. We don't have to buy it and then get reimbursed, but we do have to maintain the premises and keep records without going in.
And what is that value? What's the cost of that?
The state's looking at it from the standpoint of trying to monitor the traffic and the economic benefits of airports around the state. And what is happening with each of the airports around, and even at the FAA level, what can they justify keeping in place? I would tell you, one of the last conversations I had with the FAA was they're now looking at eliminating crosswind runways. In their opinion, you're seeing only 10-15% of the traffic using those crosswinds runways, but the cost of maintaining them is so much. So that's some of the justifications they're looking for, is this data collection on how can we better utilize the airports and what kind of traffic are we seeing. Union negotiations, we need to set a work session to go through those union contracts so that we can start looking at terms and changes that you would like to make. Now, if there's a date you want to shoot for on that one. We've already got, or have had discussions later on the agenda as far as having a special meeting on the 15th with the other surrounding communities to discuss the EMS reports. We're getting near the end of the year as far as trying to renegotiate union contracts for next year. If we can get a work session scheduled, that would be good. The 110 Washburn Road sale, we've started the 30-day notice to the prior owner to get their personal stuff out of the home. The T Park is, all the court painting is done on the tennis courts and basketball court. They look really good. The fire structural study, we met last week with Jan Murchison of Sewell and looked at the remaining plan needs for that project. The timeline that we're looking at with that, that the bid would go out the week of September 16th as far as being published in the newspaper and posted out to the different sites. Providing contractors and bidders, potential bidders, a 3-week window in which to review the plan documents means that we're looking at the second meeting of October for an award of that bid. It's anticipated that the program of work would require them to go into the truck bays and get those trusses shored up first thing so that we can try to avoid as much exposure as possible to the equipment. But that the roof repairs, the full roof repair would not take place until the springtime, so we don't have to worry about putting a new roof on over trusses that still need to be worked on and having to go up and plow snow or shovel snow off the roof on top of the new membrane. The thought is to, if we need to do some patching this fall, we'll look at that, but we'll hold off on the new membrane and insulation until the springtime, when we don't have to worry about damaging the new membrane. So overall, we're looking at starting to take care of that this fall. If they can get the new membrane and the truss work all done this fall, great. We don't have high hopes that that's going to actually take place, but we're leaving it open for the contractors to tell us what they can and can't do. The capital facility maintenance plans, we have the Criterion Brown that's going through and doing the inspections on the facilities. They've submitted to us now the final public works document, the draft for the library, the parks, or the recreation building, and City Hall. And we can get those draft reports out to the council so you can start to review those and see what items have been identified.
Is that in electronic format?
Yes.
So could you send me what you have, please?
The Sitel reimbursement, in looking at that, I've contacted Sitel, I've talked with their attorney again, and the indication is, according to the TIF, or the credit enhancement agreement that we had, they're not obligated to pay anything to the city back until next year, and they're going to delay paying anything on that until next year when that first $5,000 bill comes due. So we'll keep it here on the tickler file of the report. I don't know if you have any questions on anything else that you'd like to discuss.
So just to run this by the mayor, so we add 3 things to this: the investment policy, the tax acquired policy, and the 60 access highway back rent. How we're gonna get that?
We are.
So we paid it off.
Executive session tonight, aren't we?
Yeah.
Processes we can go further to try to get that.
Yep. Okay. If that's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. Okay. And we're still waiting for the engineer to tell us how the river road is gonna go.
I'll reach out to them again. I contacted them 2 weeks ago, and they said they would be able to finalize those plans quickly for us. Didn't reach out to them since then, so I'll contact them again and see where they're at. They do understand that this isn't going out to bid. This is simply getting us the final drawings that we can hold on to and go out to bid if we see fit. The last thing on the manager's report is the presentation that's in the council packet with regards to potential restriping of Bennett Drive. The Maine Department of Transportation Safety Division has looked at the amount of traffic accidents that have occurred between Dock Oil and Route 1, and they believe that they could potentially reduce the accidents there by upwards of almost 70%. The information is in your packet, kind of giving a background of the traffic volumes. They're saying that back in roughly 2000, we were looking at 10,000 cars a day along that stretch, and we're now down around 8,000 cars a day near Dock Oil and about 6,400 cars a day up near the Burger King area. So a significant reduction in the traffic volume. But still, in the last 5 years, there's been a significant number of accidents. The indication is that most of those they're spread out throughout the year. They're daytime crashes, most of them occurring before lunchtime.
Yeah.
Got to get to McDonald's.
It's the
Get out of the way.
and most of them pertain to rear-end crashes and near driveways. There are some what we call sideswipe crashes, but for the most part, it's driveways that are causing the issue. I think that by converting the road from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane each direction with a center turn lane, that based on other studies that they've done, there could be significant savings and saving of crashes or reduction of crashes along the route. It was presented to us as a discussion item. They'd like us to really entertain it. The information I got since the packet went out is that DOT does not have funding to implement this until maybe 2025. But we've been looking at it from the standpoint of the road itself does need a surface overlay similar to what we've done on New Sweden and the other parts of Bennett Drive last year. We're looking at maybe 2022 going in and doing resurfacing work, and at that time trying to work with the local region and getting an MPI to where they could help fund just redoing the paint for us, and we could be able to implement this new safety design in a couple of years.
That's a scheduled overlay for 21, you said?
We had it planned for 21. We think we can get it out to 22.
And that's by schedule, forgetting about any striping, not trying to move stuff up to try to go right.
Right. So 69% reduction is projected, 69% reduction in rear end and side swipe crashes, and a 36% reduction in driveway accidents.
So the point of this, just to make it clear, is that MDOT would like to take, instead of 2 lanes in each direction, 1 lane with the center for turning.
Yes.
And I want the public to know this. If you have any comments out there in TV land, come on in or write a letter and tell us what you think. That was the purpose of putting this on the agenda. It's to let people know that this is in the works, to change how we're going to do Bennett Drive, based on what MDOT says would work. Very good. You?
Just to throw it out there and make sure I understand this, and maybe anybody listening might be able to digest this a little better. So obviously, right now we got 4 lanes. They're saying we want to go down to 3. This is something you brought up a couple of years ago. You know, over the years, I'll say over the last 35 years, we've choked off several entrances and exits off of that street. How does that affect what's going on here, if at all? You know, for example, we've now lost Park Street. We used to have Franklin Street or North Street. I don't know if that was Franklin or North, but there used to be a street in between Teague Park School and Teague Park Park. The shopping center on Bennett Drive, you used to be able to get onto that by going through the buildings and the end of Rose Street. So we've really limited ourselves being able to get on and off to really one place in between the ends. How does that affect this at all?
So you're talking about the capacity to move traffic, right? And the ability to get people to and from places efficiently and not overburdening a particular area, right? You're right, when we closed Park Street, we closed off one of the major east-west corridors other than High Street, as far as being able to get people from Main Street to Bennett Drive. And so you have the issue of, we've now funneled everybody down to certain pinch points or certain intersections. What is the safety of those intersections with that additional capacity? And I raised the same issue with DOT is, because we've now channeled traffic into some areas, do we really need to look at doing something different at the intersections to assure safety? They are not, at this point, willing to entertain a light on Bennett Drive.
Bite your tongue.
They believe that, you know, what they're looking at here is trying to reduce the, what they call the conflict points on the roadway, on the design. If you reduce the number of conflict points, you reduce the potential of traffic accidents. What they're showing as far as the traffic volume is, even though we've channeled more of the traffic to certain intersections, the traffic volume has fallen significantly from 2000. And so if everything came back in the next 10 years and we're seeing another 2,000 trips a day on Bennett Drive, at that point then we probably look at, do we need to just restripe it back to 2 lanes? Or whenever they do these types of programs, they also look at before and after effects in their studies, so they could say, did this do what we intended it to do or not? I still think from a traffic standpoint of getting people east to west through the downtown, we ought to look at reopening North Street or that other road back up again at some point. If the traffic volumes continue to fall, I think it may be a time where we can say for the next 5-6 years, this is what they would call a road diet. The design of the road doesn't warrant 2 lanes in each direction according to them. Can we shrink it down and improve the safety for the time being?
I guess the only reason I want to bring it up is between now and whenever this happens, that some of these other issues get brought up, only because I think going from 4 lanes down to 2, while statistically they're saying, well, that's better. That seems like moving backwards.
You have a conflict
Yeah.
between the safety division that says this is how we can reduce traffic accidents and create a $2 million savings to the insurance industry if we make these improvements. And then you have the need to move traffic division. And so, yes, depending on which hat you're wearing or which division you're talking with at DOT, they may say, no, we don't like that. We want to maintain flows. But then you have this over here that's saying, well, we want to improve safety. It's a catch between their own departments.
I've got a set of plans in my office from the early 2000s when they were considering for this High Street rehab going with 3 lanes instead of 2. And the right-of-way is big enough for it. There's enough room for it. And that seemed like a great idea, with 1 lane in each direction with a turning lane in the middle. And for whatever reason, they didn't want to implement that there, cost or whatever. But that would seem like a very progressive change and would help traffic flow. And just this consideration seems backwards. But you're probably right that it's just you're only getting this presentation from one particular department. So, but yeah, I mean, I think we should look at our own alternatives to getting on and off of there. There's a right-of-way that runs behind that shopping center and behind Machias Savings Bank, and I'm not saying it'd be a good idea to put a road in there, but I don't think it'd be a bad idea to say, well, how could that help, if at all? So
It would certainly help funnel, it would disperse the traffic. I mean, that's the intent. If classic example of square blocks. If you have enough square blocks, the traffic's just going to find its way. But if you have cul-de-sacs and this whole area that we have, everything right now is being channeled to that intersection near Docks. And if there was other ways to open that up, we could open up that intersection a bit more, or not have as many incidents there because there's less traffic going through it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Item number 11, report by staff. Staff.
If you would, Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple things I'll bend your ear about. And this is, for us, it's pre-first read stuff, so it's down the road. We're looking at our crystal ball, and we're seeing impacts happening around the state that we think will impact us eventually. So the first one is affordable housing, and everyone's probably heard about tiny houses. So, but our code book doesn't have any room for tiny houses yet. So we need to be working on ordinances that would help us regulate the occurrence of these small dwellings. So that's one. The other one is we seem to be having a lot of calls regarding the marijuana industry. Right now it's medical marijuana caregivers, because that seems to be kind of a loophole in allowing this industry to happen in our neighborhoods and around town. We have a dispensary already, but the state is moving towards opening commercial sales for adult use October 8th. Very near.
Say that again?
I believe it was October 8th.
Oh, okay.
So I know some towns have already saying, well, we're going to delay this for a minute. Portland has already. So as we get into the new year, these will be things that we'll be taking to the planning board and having them think about it. Bring it upstairs to you guys as well. That's my 2 bits for this evening.
Thank you, Ken. Danielle.
So nomination papers, we've had people come in and take some out, of course. They are due back by September 4th at 5. Gotta have them to get the names on the ballot. So just kind of stressing the fact that I really need this for everybody. We've had over 400 requests for absentee ballots. We are very busy into the upcoming election for November, and just keep getting in the requests, and we'll keep processing as fast as we can.
Thank you.
You said 5 p.m.? You said 5 p.m.?
Yes, I will be here until 5 p.m. that day.
Any other questions or comments? Dennis, I have a draft ordinance that Paul Camping, and I've been talking to Paul Camping for a couple years on land banking, and it's only meant to be a starting point for you and Ken and the other committee members to look at. And we'd like to have you start to think about, let's get a land bank as one tool in the toolbox to fight blight. It's not the only tool. Matter of fact, there's many tools that are going to have to go into this box. But I'd like to present it to you at the end of the meeting and digest it. And as you know, Paul has been has educated himself quite at length on this subject. And these have been, this is a combination of ideas from other communities that have created land banks. And it's a starting point. It's not meant to be the catch-all. So I'll give it to you at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Is there any one of these that you want to do first, Dennis?
I really have nothing else to report as far as the 12A, so I think we could skip that tonight, unless there's, desire to do it. I think there's 12B.
12B, Real Estate and Economic Development. Chair entertains a motion to go into executive session under 405.6.c.
So moved.
Moved by Hugh, seconded by Joan. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great and safe evening. Thank you, and good night.